Very happy to be here today virtually at the third Global Sociocracy Online Conference. My interest in dynamic governance, self-management started a few years ago when I wanted to provide structure to a startup that just created without any particular formal organization. So I thought it was an interesting approach to explore, to give structure without creating a big hierarchical environment. I joined so far only a couple months ago, and as I said, very happy to be here to share my experience and above all to learn from others. So I will tell you a little bit about us, what we do, and what motivates us in creating this assessment, which we call the Conscious Business Assessment. And so that will take me in discussing a little bit about consciousness, but basically it's a set of tools and practice that we develop to help organizations addressing the human factor in the adoption of dynamic governance, whether it's sociocracy or lacracy or other. So I will tell you a little bit about the building blocks of the Conscious Business Assessment, how we developed it, how we used it, and draw some conclusion. So allow me to spend a couple of minutes to elaborate on the concept of consciousness, or at least what we mean by it. Since consciousness is a very important part of actually the activity and the positioning of the company I'm active with now, it's called Luzval. Actually, consciousness has escaped, at least in the Western world, scientific inquiry so far. So it's a bit challenging to put consciousness at the heart of a management approach. This is changing, actually. There are fascinating research, mostly still a bit speculative, that connect consciousness, information, entropy, the origin of life, and everything. Going through this would take a lot of time, so I would rather illustrate our notion of consciousness with some images. The first one is Earthrise. That was an inspiration to the birth of the Earth Day movement, still active and ever more needed 50 years later. Another example of what we mean by consciousness is this notion that comes from theory U, that we are all part of a system, and when we study the system, we should turn the spyglass on ourselves because we impact the system the same way as the system impacts us. And this is captured very well by a famous quote. You may know it from the Sufi scholar Rumi. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. So, well, I'm an optimist. And I believe that even if in the most recent time we have witnessed a rise in populism, ecosystem, and fake news, I believe that the wave of growth of consciousness is stronger. And I think it's what is at the origin of the teal movement, of the growth of civil society, of notions like conscious business, the B Corporation, and of course, sociocratic and holocratic organizational approaches. The latest signal that I found it very encouraging on this growth of consciousness in Switzerland. I'm active between Paris and Geneva, and in Switzerland there is a referendum that is gaining a lot of support. I think it will be voted on in the fall, about making all multinational companies who are located in Switzerland liable in front of Swiss law for any damage or any impact they have environmentally or socially anywhere in the world. So that's a big step to bring consciousness in the business world. So to me, conscious consumer is the only alternative to what we consider, or what classical economic considers, the rational being that operates to optimize to its own utility. For example, we are very active on another project in the context of climate change. And I believe the world is facing some sort of prisoner's dilemma in the context of climate change. You may know the prisoner's dilemma is a paradox in decision theory where two individuals, perfectly rational, acting in their own self-interest, totally miss to produce the optimal choice. And I think that's what we are facing climate change. On this project that we're active, we are using artificial intelligence to explore the context of the energy transition and the fossil fuel and the oil and gas environment. And basically what we see increasingly, and what appear also from the scenarios that reputable companies, McKinsey or Capgemini are putting up, is that the oil and gas industry is rationally, economically, and deliberately working under the assumptions that fossil fuels will be a major source of energy for the whole century, and we will miss the climate change objective of remaining within 2, not to talk about 1.6 degrees Celsius temperature raise. So the fact that the planet will not be there to live on has not dawned on them yet. So basically, we want to position our activity strongly on this notion of growing organizational consciousness. And to do that, we try to build an ecosystem of service and platforms to help companies in those transitions. And we basically work on 4 main directions, which we believe, we call them the 4 petals of the organizational transition, to help achieve organizational purpose. And we have tools in, we work with other companies and partner, for example, in competence management. We work with Peerdom, which is a sociocratic style organizational mapping. We do coaching. Mileva is our artificial intelligence partner. We work with the B Corporation. We have not B certified yet, but we would like to. We're working on that. And we work with psychometric tool, Prema, which is actually the building block of the conscious business assessment that I want to talk about today. So I was telling you before that I started my interest in sociocracy in setting up a self-management system in my own company. I was, let's say, very moderately satisfied of the result for a number of reasons. Difficulty for some people to live out control and power. Difficulty for others to understand the paradigm of self-management. And while I know of companies that are extremely happy with Holacracy. I know a company in IT, there's 150 in Switzerland. They've been doing that for a few years, and they're extremely happy. I realized that I'm not necessarily alone in having faced some difficulty. You may all have heard of Zappos, the 20% of the company leaving, actually invited to leave if they didn't like Holacracy. I know a company where the management wanted to bring Holacracy in, and the employee didn't like it. The owners eventually didn't like it, and the managers who initially brought it there were all sacked after 3 years. That brings some, can I say, patronizing attitude and lack of confidence towards Holacracy from the mainstream. For example, this picture here comes from a newspaper article of a few weeks ago that says, it's in French, it's a Swiss magazine, that says the model of self-management, which sometimes in French is called entreprise libérée, does not work. So that was the main title, but when you read the article, actually the company is still working as self-management. They just had to do some adjustment. So, but there is sorry, I'm going the wrong way. There is a general lack of confidence from the mainstream towards Holacracy or Sociocracy. There are some papers also on Harvard Business Review. And I know that all the coaches, the practitioners, everybody has tools and approaches to um, take into consideration what we call the human factor of implementing those processes that sometimes are difficult to accept. So we started thinking, can we help? Can we provide, using our approach, maybe some tools that can help other organizations go towards the implementation and facilitate some of the approaches? So we relied on the psychometric tool. It's called Prema. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, with the idea to create an assessment that can help the organization turn the spyglass towards itself at the team level, at the individual level, and understand how their behavior relates to this new environment, but might be challenging since you lose a lot of framework of the classical hierarchical environment, and basically build some sort of immune system to protect the team or the organization from the challenges of challenge of changing the mindset, resistance to change, understanding the paradigm, control, and power resilience. So this is based on this this assessment, which is called Prema. It's been developed in Canada over the last 25 years. It's a fairly complex tool and environment, and I will certainly not do justice to it in a few minutes, but I will try to give you the gist of it. It's been developed, as I said, in Canada. It's been validated at Sherbrooke University, so it's a valid scientific psychometric test. There's about 1,000 certified coaches who have been trained and certified to use the test. Among them, there's Lucia, who's my partner in Lusval, and she's next to me, so she can answer questions that are more specific about the test. She's more experienced in it than I am. But basically, the test is built along five typologies called tradition, reflection, imagination, mediation, and action. And to give you an idea of what that represents, knowing that each of us has a mixture of all of the five preference and typologies, but typically with maybe two dominant ones and one that is weaker than the rest. So that gives a little polarization to each of us. And I'm sure as we go through it, you will identify people that you know, oh, say, yes, Joe is exactly like that. Typically, somebody who is focused on the tradition, look at reliability of actions and projects, so that the person would ask the first question of to do what? If you ask him to do something, what's the objective? What will it work? Somebody who is more in the analytical framework or typology would ask why, and try to make analysis, calculation. A creative one will probably the first one who wants to try new things and will be the first to say, hey, why not? Somebody and that would be the imagination. Somebody in the mediation typology would be some more diplomatic and start thinking about the impact on all the stakeholders and on the people and ask for whom will that be good. And finally, the proactive type, once convinced of the good of the idea, will be the first one to say, let's do it. Why not now? Let's go for it. So these are the five typologies. And then there are three layers. There is an inner layer, which is the main disposition, what you are when you are with friends, the way you naturally are. The next layer is about the means that you bring, and that will be the layers that we'll be most interested in today. And that's related to the competence, the competences that you bring in your professional context. And the third layer is the intention. What typologies do you use when you try to influence the world around you? So these are, in a sense, the leadership styles. So the full test comprehends these three layers and can take about an hour and a half to take, very long, give you very detailed report and profiles on the various aspects, but we don't need that. We go in the conscious business assessment, we go to the middle layer, which is a specific feature of this model, that it brings 120 soft skills competences like autonomy, self-management, and classifies them across these 5 typologies, and provides a unique definition for each of them. And as the further specificity compared to other psychometric tests that are available on the market, and those of you who are in coaching are maybe familiar with, this has a specificity that you can create your own subtest. You can pull out of those 120 competences the 12 to 15 that describe maybe a particular role or describe your corporate culture. And you can create a subtest that takes only 10 minutes to take, that you can use to assess, for example, when in a recruitment context, whether somebody is more or less aligned with the expected profile for that job or with the corporate culture. Knowing that, speaking of recruitment, that it is not a normative test, it's an ipsative test, that is, it does not rank people against each other. So if you compare several people, even if they score high on a competence, you cannot say that Mary is higher than Joy. You can only say that a specific competence, Mary is more comfortable and more interested, has more mastery than other competences. So it doesn't try to put labels on people, it helps people understanding their own preference, which is something we care a lot about. So basically we wanted to create a test that could be used in organizations that want to explore the possibility to go towards self-management, to understand whether the people involved would find a good fit or would find challenges, difficulties in basically embracing this new way of working and interacting with each other. So the Prema model comes with a prescription on how to build those subtests, and actually you do not go around asking for what competence do you believe are most important, but you start from asking what are the challenges that you encounter in a specific context. So the best way we thought to do that was to ask about those challenges to people involved in setting up self-management, and these are the organization. It's quite a broad set of organization, different size, different environments, mostly for profit, some not for profit, from different sectors of business. And basically we collected about 50 different challenges that we mapped on the competency-based model Prema, and basically the seven types. So we have understanding and organize in the tradition and reflection. We have changing paradigm in the imagination sector. We have connecting, communicating, developing self and others in the mediation sector. And we have autonomy, commitment, leadership, and empowerment. So I imagine most, if not all of you, are involved in the in Sociocracy. I would invite you within your organization, within your own implementation of Sociocracy, do you have any specific challenge? Can you identify any specific challenge that you're facing in setting up or in running from the human point of view, from the interpersonal point of view, and running this model of organization? I think it would be nice to share among us, and I would certainly be very curious to see what you have to. Trying to move to the next slide here. These are some examples. For example, in the autonomy sector group, we had feedback like, okay, challenges having the time to embrace accountabilities by role holders, if they do not have proper supervision, the change in the employee mindset, the fact that people are not used to organize themselves. In the leadership and empowerment, we had feedback finding difficulty drive people towards adoption. I can see yes, commitment, yeah, too. The fear of bringing tension coming up, and the fear of being considered as somebody who has complaints. Tensions are not complaints, but that can be difficult to understand at the beginning. The impression that the new paradigm is used not for the right reason. I once was in touch with a medical alternative medicine schools, private, that wanted to implement holacracy, but the employee had the impression it was really done to cut on management fees, because basically they were told, hey guys, great news, you're now your own bosses, but they will still pay on the number of hours they delivered classes. So they said, hey, the burden is on us, and it's just, this is mainly a way to save money. So that did not fly very well. So based on those challenges, we selected the 13 competences that now represent the core of our conscious business assessment. And these are understanding the organization, maybe I should start from T, sense of effectiveness, resource optimization, managing priorities, and understanding the organization from the R section, changing paradigms from the imagination section, in the mediation, effective communication, self-management, coaching, mutual support, reconciliation, and from the active sector, mobilizing, commitment, autonomy. And for each of those, as I said, we have a specific definition that can be used to clarify the meaning, the exact meaning, and talk about those competences within the team. So the test can be in two ways. Online, it is precise feedback that can be used for coaches and be very, very useful for coaching individuals. If you want to do it more as a group, it can be done in workshop mode. It's more interactive. The results are less precise. I will show you output from both. So basically, this is what comes out from an online sector.
Excuse me, Roberto. Can I interrupt you real quick? Your internet, Roberto. I think your internet quality or your sound quality just went down about 30 seconds ago. Actually, if you sit up, it's perfectly well. Say something again.
Okay.
Say something.
Okay, can you hear now?
Maybe it is the internet.
Comes and goes.
Is there something that changed about it? What just changed? Anybody have an idea? But try. Say again.
Okay, do you hear it better? I can try to speak louder and closer to the.
I think it's okay-ish. What do other image is slow, so probably internet connection. Somebody says. Okay, so okay, let's
internet connection.
Yeah, okay, let's try again because it's okay-ish right now, but it was
Okay.
Thank you. So start over about half a minute ago. Sorry about that.
Okay, from the same slide, or do I need to go back?
And I think same slide is good. Yeah, start over.
Okay, so yeah, basically I was going to the true option of delivering the test online and workshop mode. So the online gives you this type of report where the different competences are classified on whether you have a strong interest and a strong mastery in using those competences. So these are the optimal zone. You have the consolidation zone where either the mastery or the interest is lower, and you have the development zone where there are both mastery and interest are somewhat low. So this is a fairly precise and can be used for for coaching in one-on-one coaching sessions. When we do it as a workshop, we basically create a set of cards with these are the 13 competences. So we give people a set of cards of 13 competence. We give them what we call the competency meter, and we ask to put them in these four quadrants: high interest and high mastery, or high mastery and low interest, high interest and low mastery, or both low interest and mastery. And I invite you, if you feel like, to share for you which one would you put in, for example, if I feel very comfortable in coaching, I could put 1 as a competence of coaching and 4 for managing priorities, for example. Feel free to share that in the chat. And in both cases, what we do, we build a picture of the overall alignment of the team against the 13 competences. So this is, for example, the result from an NGO I'm active with, and we see that at pretty much at the 2 extremes, we have autonomy, which is a fairly high level for everyone, and at the opposite, we have self-management. So it might sound a little bit paradoxical, but actually, when we look at the description, autonomy is about being able to work independently without supervision, while management is being self-aware, to be able to promote oneself and achieve recognition, which might have been difficult given the organizational structure, given the culture of the organization to achieve in that specific organization. So using this tool, we managed to trigger within the organization some interesting conversations on why these and other aspects of the competences were higher or weaker, and what the team could do to practice and to develop those competences. The tool, the model comes with a set of organizational change and coaching tools that can be used. For example, for each competence, in this case, changing paradigm, being able to change paradigm, we have tables of key behaviors that are good examples of proper behavior in practicing that competence for changing paradigm, having flexibility, and being open to new experiences. Life to start fresh and to discover new solutions, new ways of doing things. So these are tools that teams can use either internally or with a coach to practice and to explore further the reason of why they are more comfortable or less comfortable with this competence or the other. So conclusion. So basically, leaving the hierarchical realm can expose organization to unexpected challenge. Like when you go to a trip to a beautiful but exotic country, you might meet unknown viruses and disease. So you need to improve your immune system. So we try to develop the CBA to raise awareness of current individual and team position towards the soft skills needed to collaborate in a self-managed environment in order to reinforce this immune system. And our initial test of the assessment have shown that the tool can trigger interesting, constructive conversation, and they can be the starting point for setting up programs, coaching program, coaching circle, co-coaching, co-development.